1.1 or 1.2 because we have a little bit more to talk about. This is a big topic that we missed, and we want to give it some time. So with me is Nero and Noggin, sorry, I saw the L there for Lock. Noggin Lock. We're going to be talking about something that is entering the game soon. So Nero, what is it we're talking about?
Okay, so these are likely Triglavian dreadnoughts being produced by the Triglavians in this new structure called the Triglavian Shipyard.
Okay, and they are, again, where are you getting this information from?
Okay, so I'll start at the beginning.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, well, no, about a month ago, there was a Triglavian video which showed this structure you see here in wireframe, and people, but like at a weird angle, so you couldn't see all of it. And people were saying, "What is this? Is this a station? Is this another Wild Ark?" People weren't really sure. So that was the first hint of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then now, Hobo Leaks has updated. We have loads of new images from loads of things. We have that, which is called Shipyard in the files, like
Oh.
pretty explicitly, with various stages of construction, implying it's going to be built up over time. And then we have some files called TGDN, which we presume means Triglavian Dreadnought, which people over at ARC have managed to create that from. The TGDN texture specifically being that Dreadnought texture you see.
Wild. Okay, so what we're seeing is the bones, right? Like this is the backbone of it being built by these, or that's a modeled version of it.
And I think the idea is that the one small, the thing you see to the bottom right is the
Mm-hmm.
Dreadnought, and that this is a big shipyard for producing quite a few of them.
Yeah, you can see in the middle here, there seems to be a space. It probably will be the,
This
well,
is a
who
very
knows?
incomplete reconstruction, as
Yeah,
you can see.
who knows? Who knows? Well, this is in the game. The image that we're seeing in with the backdrop is in the game. It's in,
It's on
sorry,
Sissy.
it's on CC, the test server. So it's not in the actual official Tranquility server, the game we call it. This is in the test server. So
None of this is in the in the main game. Sorry.
yeah, none of it's in the main games. We'll make that clear.
I reckon they'll announce something at Vegas, most probably.
Well, this weekend, we should have said this, is the Finnish Eve meet at somebody's
FanFest.
house. Or Fan Fest. It's yes, not an Eve meet, it's a Fan Fest at somebody's house because the guy won the contest saying, hey, invite us over. And that we expect some announcements there. I don't know what they'll be because they're basically going to stream from there. There's really no audience that's going to be local. This always happens at this time. I got to figure out how to stop that. And they are going to make some announcements in Finland, but probably the next big one is it G Fleet in Germany? I think so. And then in less than 2 months, you have Vegas. So there'll be some announcements saved for that as well. So we'll see what's actually going on.
Yeah, I think this will slowly break out over because you've got the recon vessels in high sec to do with the Triglavian, so they've pushed that out, and I think between now and Vegas you'll see a few spikes of activity that will lead to potentially whatever this is. But Trig dreadnoughts is what people have been talking about, or Trig capital ships in general. People have been talking about for a very long time, even since the World Arc was announced. So give the people what they want.
Yeah. So though we don't know whether we'll get to fly them yet.
Yeah, so these might be something that they may be a boss, more or less, or they might be something that eventually falls into the hands of players. I think at some point these ships will be available to players because it seems that a lot of work is going into this racial line. And we talked to CCP Rice about it, and he did want to develop a racial line as opposed to a faction. They're different. A racial line is a group of ships that you can actually that has everything built out from T1 versions to T2 versions. And faction ships are singular. They have only one battleship. They have only one dreadnought or whatever type of ship. They only have one of it. So this racial line with Triglavian stuff has a the simple version and then the advanced version of the same ship for every ship that they're releasing. And
It started out like a faction because you had frigate, cruiser, battleship, which is the standard.
Mm-hmm.
Then they added the other ones. Then they added the Tech 2 version, so it's really starting to fill out now.
Right. Yeah, it's been constructed differently. So, and so that makes me think that this ship, even though it may not be available to you at first, at some point will become available, maybe in some limited way as a reward for running some of the sites. And that brings me back to CCP. I think what Hilmar was saying was, hey, we have enough interest outside the game. We have enough interest inside the game. Let's keep this game going. Let's do it this way by experimenting really quickly. And I honestly think that a lot of the drive and the 70% of the development attention span is going towards new players, is to funnel them not necessarily to these null groups at all. It's to funnel them into a part of the game that is, what they call it, procedurally regenerated. And that means that the game itself develops itself. And I think the point that Hilmar wants to reach it, and this is a long shot, but the theoretical end of this is that the advanced technology, the AI of EVE Online, the procedural regeneration, will surprise even them. It has, there has been fights between NPC characters that fought each other and nobody knew about it. Nobody saw it, but they saw it in their statistics that there was a fight between these two NPCs. And that's the beginning of the wow moments of, wow, look what this game can do to itself. So I think that's kind of like the end state of EVE Online as a procedural regenerated game. That is something that probably will never happen. And if it does, it'll be years from now. But that's the path that they're on.
Many have tried. Not so many have succeeded.
Mm-hmm.
It's the dream, isn't it? The game makes itself and you don't even need to do anything.
No, you essentially put the parameters in and you maintain it and you let it grow like a plant.
In a way, EVE has done that since its inception because players, even though not AI, but the players have done that. CCP have been constantly surprised of what the players have done throughout the years, and you got a whole history and backlog to prove it. Just on everything from the big Titan fights to the corp thefts to the, first wars and invasions to the latest ones.
Yeah, good point. The players have been the artificial intelligence. Yeah. So anyway, I think that the construction of the NPC stuff and the Triglavian work that they did with the sites, that all that NPC PvE stuff really signals that that's the funnel that is getting a lot of attention. I think players will be funneled into both, but I don't think they want what they have now, which is these large groups that basically take new players and stick them into the apparatuses of nullsec, especially big nullsec blocks that have thousands of players in them, and have those players try to keep them entertained by war, because essentially they're a letdown, I think. I don't know. I'm not a player. Well, actually, you're gonna have a better reference on this, Noggin, than I will. You ended up joining Test right away after you joined, or were you in HiSec for a while?
I was in about HiSec for about a year, and I was smiling and watching about World War B, and I was actually very close to quitting in HiSec, and I thought to myself I'd kick myself if I didn't try nullsec before I left, and tried it and never.
Yeah, so you went to Test and you fought in the aftermath of the war, and then you were really probably part of the group that migrated down south that gave Legacy and Test their home that they're in now.
Yeah, I constantly say that to new players. I was part of a brand new bros corporation in Test, and we were one of the primary, or if not the primary, new bro corporation there. We try to teach a lot of people how to live and do their stuff in nullsec, and I told them constantly, I tell them now, I still go back to the corporation. I'm in Moose Army now, the same as Seraph, and I say, people complain about the state of the game now, and I said, you don't understand because you weren't there when you had to log in and invade somewhere. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you didn't log in and go, oh, what am I going to do? Carry a rat, do this, make money, whatever, some war with fraternity. I said, we logged in, and when I logged in, I was like, what fleets are up because I don't have a home? and it was the funnest time I've ever
Yeah.
played Eve. Was invading my now home, right?
Mhm.
So, and I feel like when you look at the history of Eve as well, you say like the biggest and best wars that people can talk about is when they had nothing to
Yeah.
lose. So it was either you win or you go back into the drawing board and I've now still got nowhere to live. And those victories, those desperate victories, were always brought out of the fact of like I have nothing to lose and only they have, so I've got to win this.
Very true.
It was very it was such a good time, and then the aftermath, and then the rebuilding of Test, and now Legacy, and with all our allies as well, has been very good. And that's where I think people it's become stale because no one's moving, and it's because they don't have to move.
Well, I think it's more than that. It's not just there's nothing to fight for, but there's nothing to suffer for, and that is an important aspect of the game is to suffer with friends. That's the bonding experience. That's the euphoria of it. And some of the worst times I had in the game where we were literally fighting each other over wreckage. After we'd kill somebody, we'd fight over the loot because we were starving. We had no equipment and we had no way of getting equipment. And that is a different experience than sitting there and saying, I think I'll do this, I think I'll do that, or I'll do none. It's a whole different ball game. If you're satisfied, and I think the end state is not necessarily to push these groups to fight each other, but it's to starve them. To starve them and make them meaner. I think that's what they're doing to nullsec players. They've been too comfortable too long. They want to shock them. They want to starve them. They want to make them hungry and make them ruthless, basically.
I hope that's the way they're going.
Well, it sure is.
Yeah.
They've turned off the faucets, basically. I mean, they were making a ton of money extracting and harvesting resources out there in deep space that are supposed to be hard to get, but they managed to build an infrastructure around that. Now, that's pretty cool. It has its own sexy cachet, as far as I'm concerned, of empire building, and that appeals to me greatly. But it is a distortion of the game. Because out there you're supposed to be not have you have so many benefits out there that makes it essentially safer than doing stuff in some corners of high sec, which is completely on its head. And then you have funnels of people going into it, making the problem worse. That's what I talk about.
Yeah, that's I've said this in my little group of friends for a long time, is that resource depreciation needs to happen. You need, and again, it's not just like moving for the sake of, because for whatever. It's if you move or you have to expand or like shuffle around the map for resources, or at least if you own a large area, your population within that area is moving from place to place. The more people in space moving around, the more there is for people to fight over. And you can make those resources as hard as you like to get, and you'll be sure within a couple of weeks someone's going to find out a way of doing it just as easy as they did it before with the security they had before. So that's why moving people around, or even saying, if you depreciate this region to a point, it's going to take X amount of time to come back. You're either going to sit on your hands for a month, or you can go and invade those people for a month and move around a little bit. That's why I think they did. I personally think there's problems with citadels in the fact that it makes you stay somewhere where you've invested a lot of money to put those citadels down. But that's just me. But I think resource depreciation would help. Like you can get more reward for the risk that now the blackout and other changes like the Sino changes might give, but the reward would be bigger. But it's short-lived, and you have to move again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, but I do think the end state is not. I think it's not. I don't know if I know a lot of guys on TAS are talking about resource scarcity and that kind of stuff, and it needs to be explored for sure. But I honestly feel like the idea is to not only turn off what they have, but to make them scared, to make them suffer, to make them lash out. When you're scared, when you're hungry and grumpy, you are more likely to be in conflict with other people who are the same. So I kind of
I've never seen. Some of my friends are the biggest people that wanted to make money in the game and happily made money in Vale, in New Bros. I've never seen more enthusiastic Intosises in my entire EVE history when they didn't have a home. It was
Right?
quite impressive.
They're motivated.
Definitely, motivation was
Yeah.
there.
I'm tired of living in the woods. I'm tired of getting kicked around. I'm gonna take this territory here from Russians. That's who you guys ended up booting.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly. And we went so far as to get in trouble with our own diplos, saying you were taking iHubs too fast. We don't have enough iHubs to put down. So there were systems just sitting there with no iHub for a couple of days before we got.
Yeah.
What a problem
Yeah.
to have.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So Apollonian 210 says, I'm moving out of Null and looking at WoW Classic, honestly. I've heard that, actually. A lot of people saying, oh, WoW Classic's going to take a big bite out of EVE Online. And I've heard that from a lot of people. It's very interesting. And I just laugh because I think, remember the time when if you said you even played WoW, it was really embarrassing? Like, people are like, what are you doing here? You're in the wrong place. Go back to WoW. That was an insult not long ago. And I feel like a lot of people are saying, hey, I'm looking at classic WoW. I think I'm older now, but I look back at all the times where I try to go back to something that was magical, like maybe WoW, vanilla WoW when it started. And it's not the same, because when you go through something, that's when you become euphoric about it, or dopamine hits you and imprints that you had a good time when you did a certain thing. Have you ever watched a movie and, you were with that special someone and the movie was freaking great because it was just such a great night because you found out this girl actually liked you, in my case, or, it's just kind of a magical thing and it was all imprinted on that movie. So years later, you go back and you're like, I love that movie. That movie was so great. And you watch it and the movie's terrible because it had nothing to do with the movie, and maybe had nothing to do with that special someone. It just had to do, I think, with the imprint of the euphoria of the moment. So if that happens in a video game, you have a great time, you meet new people, it's exciting, you're seeing new content, it's all new to you and it's magical. But then, after a while, that kind of runs out because dopamine's geared to not reward you for doing the same thing over and over again. Unless it's chemical, and that's a whole different thing. But basically, it runs out after a while because it wants you to do the next thing. And you move on. And then you try to go back later, years later, you try to go back to that thing that was so fun. And I think you're going to be disappointed, unfortunately. It might not be.
That's why Eve wins, because you come back to something old, you get all you nostalgic about it, and then you come back and there's new stuff in that old thing that you can do, and you're with the same friends that made those times good before, and yeah, win-win.
Yeah.
The rose-tinted glasses will come off for WoW Classic soon enough. It had its problems.
Yeah. I remember when it came out, I was playing a different game and I was seeing people leave my game for that game. And I thought, well, what's with this WoW thing? It's I just don't like cartoons. So it wasn't appealing to me. I like things that are more science fiction-y, photorealistic. So I didn't migrate. But, obviously people had a lot of fun and there was a lot of laughter and, people, it made a ton of money for reasons. But then it evolved and evolved and evolved and evolved. And I think the WoW vanilla thing, I don't get why people are that excited about it, except they want to go back to that place that was fun. Or maybe it was less complicated so they could actually compete. Whatever it is, it's going to wear off, I think. So enjoy WoW or any other game, but it wears off. And the thing about EVE Online is that the game is constantly procedurally generating, but not through AI, it's through people, as you said before. I thought that was very astute. It's a different game, even if the players are the same, they're up to different things. The mechanics are forcing them to do different things. And if they're hungry and mean at the same time, that means it's a little more interesting than even your typical. All right, thanks, guys.
Oh, thank you. Yep.
Yeah. So there is no Talking in Stations tonight. It was recorded last night. The podcast will be out soon. Check it out there. We'll try to get our podcasts in order. They're coming out a bit late. I'm very dissatisfied about that. So we will work to get that out quicker. And I want to start publishing these morning newsday things. I haven't given them a name yet, but I want to start publishing them to the podcast so people can can hear them when they are driving around and stuff like that. Okay, thanks for joining us. If you missed the earlier hour, check that out on Twitch. It'll be on YouTube as well. And again, we'll try to publish that on the podcast. For now, that is everything from TIS. We will see you Sunday.